Hey, what's up, guys? This is Drew. Welcome back to the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. Hey, today I've got on Tanner Guzy. I am super excited to have him on and have an awesome conversation. Kind of found Tanner through social media about a year ago or so and connected just a couple conversations back and forth, but have been working a while to want to get him on. So super excited about the conversation. So Tanner is a father of five, so four girls and a boy. He's the founder of Masculine Style, which is a coaching service that's going to teach men how to look like the best versions of themselves, and really brought on Tanner to have a conversation, one about style, about appearance, stuff that a lot of us struggle with, and really like how we can, use that to one, express ourselves, but then two, what is that saying about us in society as well? And so brought him on to talk about that, but then also wanted to talk a lot about, fatherhood. Tanner's a father of five. He's got some really good tips and tricks about homeschooling and all that stuff. So super excited for the conversation. So Tanner, welcome to the podcast, man. And what did we talk about today?
Man, we had a good time. We talked about, embarrassing yourself in a sweaty puddle as a beginner in hot yoga, and why good dads make their kids eat live bugs, and what it's like to have green hair at a private school, and and all sorts of craziness related to that. But no, it was fun to get to talk about the idea of aspirational fatherhood and how we won't know if we're good dads until we see how our grandkids do as kids, and how important it is for us to embrace the role of fatherhood, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. So it's fun to hit on that.
Awesome, Tanner. Well, appreciate you being on, man. And let's hop into the episode.
Let's do it.
Are you ready to become the dad you know you are meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect action is better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of three, and founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they're called to be. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode. Now, so Tanner,
All right.
Good to see you. What's going on?
Happy to be here, Drew. Excited to do this, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, thanks for hopping on. As I'm starting to build out the podcast and think about people to bring on, like there was, a number of names on my list, and yours was right at the top. So I appreciate it, man. So hey, for folks that don't know Tanner, like, would you give us just a little bit of summary about yourself and kind of let us know what you've been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent the last 10 years, I have the weirdest job in the world. I teach men how and why they should care about their clothes. And it's like so much resistance. Yeah, like that, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's good. It passes. Yeah, the colors are good. And it fits good. No, but really, like, I teach men how to change the way that they view themselves, how to change the nature of their relationships by dressing in a way that's better for them. I'm also a very active dad. I love what you're doing with this. I think that intentional fatherhood, aspirational fatherhood, saves civilizations, and we need more of it now than we ever have. I've got 5 kids myself, all under the age of 10, and I know for me, any element of excellence that I've achieved in my own life has been because of the pressure of being a husband and a father, and fatherhood is the best. And so I love coming on shows like yours because I get to beat the drum that matters most to me. Clothing is part of it, but fatherhood is the biggest mission. It's the best.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into the clothing stuff, because I read your book and I see you've got kind of the thing in the background there, the appearance of power, and just like the importance of of aesthetics, and really trying to break like the common like misnomer that, hey, I'm a dad now, I don't need to give a shit about what I look like, and
right.
So we'll dive into that too. But like I totally want to talk about fatherhood, because you mentioned something right off the bat that you think it's going to save civilization. So like I have my views on that. I'd love for you to expand. Like, what do you mean by that?
I think that the family is the most fundamental unit of any sort of culture, any sort of civilization. I think one thing that libertarians get wrong, we'll just come out swinging. I think one thing that libertarians get wrong is the belief that the individual is the smallest member of society, and individuals are nothing. It's families. You need husbands and wives and parents and children, and we're incomplete without those complementary roles. And so you cannot have functioning, healthy people unless they have families. And fatherhood, it's our job to lead that and to create the culture and the environment. It's our job to preside over those families. And so fatherhood really is like the linchpin of all civilization from my perspective.
Yeah, so I 100% agree with that, and I think one interesting thing you said with like the libertarian view, the individual is like the lowest level of society, and I think like what we've noticed lately, and I don't know how long it's been going on, but for a while now, is like we treat everything like it's an individual decision.
Hmm.
And with that though, we lose some of our institutions and like the roles that we play in life. And I feel like, hey, some guys can dads, that's great. Like some guys have kids and so like they're never gonna be fathers, but still they can like take that kind of paternalistic view of like I need to lead and I need to lead
Yep,
my community and like not have it be about myself as an individual, And so I think
absolutely.
that's been a huge shift in the culture lately, man. It's just like everything's about the individual person.
But at the same time, I love that there is, I think that the middle ground of culture is disappearing, where you have more and more of this push towards like weird individualism and everything is morally subjective and nobody can tell me anything and it's all of this. And that leads to all of its own host of problems. But like, there's so many men who are doing what we're trying to do. There's so many. I mean, I can't imagine 10 years ago logging on a site like Instagram or Twitter and seeing so many pro fatherhood guys that were out there. It just didn't happen. You had art of manliness and fatherhood was like part of what Brett was doing.
Mhm.
But there's just so much now. And it's so cool to see this momentum building of dad being a dad is not where manhood is just like relegated to go die. but it becomes this thing where so many dads and so many men are just like, sweet, it's time to step up. And I love the pressure of this responsibility. And I want to surround myself with other men who get it. And I want to raise my kids in a way that they know that I get it. And fatherhood is rocket fuel for them. And so it's really fun to see that cultural shift as well.
Yeah, and I think like so the areas of my life when I've been like the most happy and fulfilled has been when I've had like the most responsibility, I think,
Yep.
and I think a lot of people miss that, right? I think they think like, I'm not going to be a dad because it's going to be, too much responsibility, too much pressure on me. I just want to be free, right, to do what I
Hmm.
want to do, and then they're miserable,
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
And it's like just for instance, like my life right now, right? Like I still work in the corporate space and I took about 2 months off or so from my last role to the next one, and the first week was nice, right? Kind of like a little break, but then
Uh-huh.
like, dude, I am like,
I
I'm
need
sucking.
purpose.
I
I
need
need
something to
direction
do.
and
Yeah,
purpose and
yeah,
responsibility and yeah, all of it. Yeah.
yeah. So I had the same view. And I think, just when you look at the culture right now, like I started this company and like this brand and the podcast, like to really focus on like the long game, right? Like
Hmm.
I think we're not going to have an immediate fix by just like having good dads right now.
Right.
Like it's great to see, but it's really like going to be a generational change,
We'll see how we did when our grandkids are adults.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the long game. Yeah. So you got 5 kids, Tanner?
Yeah.
Okay, all
Yeah.
under
Four
10.
girls and a boy, all under 10. Yeah.
Okay, when did the boy come? Like in the
He was
mix?
number two.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Yeah, I just had so I've got 2 girls and just had a boy.
Oh,
So
nice. That's awesome.
so so
You
yeah.
guys done or do you have more in the tank?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah, that's a fun one, right?
Yeah,
My
you come
wife
back and
always
ask
gets
me
mad at me when I ask people that. And it's just like, all right, it's just part of our culture. Like, I think it's part of the dad space. It's just like, are you done? Do you want to have more? Because either way,
yeah.
you get excited for guys. Yeah.
I think like I don't know, there like you'll always want another one, I don't think
Yeah.
I like if I just went by like, do I want another one? It's like, yeah, of course.
Always.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll give it a couple months, see how he does. He's been pretty chill so far. Out of the
That's
three,
awesome.
he's been the most relaxed baby. So I don't know. We'll see. May
That's
open the
great,
door for
dude.
more. Well, cool, Tanner. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, I want to dive into really just like your journey, right? Like people
Yep.
might look you up on Instagram after this and be like, "Hey, Tanner's got it all together." He's got he's
Nope.
got one the hair, two the beard, and then I mean, you're an entrepreneur, like you're out there killing it. Like, take us back to like when you first kind of had a switch to like, "Hey, I need to start getting some direction in my life. This is kind of what I want to do." And like, what did that struggle look like?
So for me, it started. I've been previously married, and my first marriage was falling apart, and I couldn't find any real resources. It just felt like everything that I tried was just exacerbating things and making things worse. And I found Art of Manliness mostly because of the style stuff that Brett was writing about. I think I found his first article, How to Shave Like Your Grandpa. And it was on there And in the comment sections that I found guys linking to a bunch of other men's blogs that have been defunct now for years, places like Hawaiian Libertarian or the Spearhead or stuff like that. And it was one of those situations where you read some of the stuff that these guys are talking about the differences between men and women, or how masculinity should be cultivated and should be embraced. And it just clicked, where it was just like, holy crap, this makes so much sense. And I can't believe I've never thought about it this way before. But now that I'm seeing it, it makes so much sense. And so it all really started to shift from there. And what's fun is, so I've been involved with like the manosphere or the men's movement or all of this now since that would have been 2009. And so I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of iterations. When I first came in, it was all pickup, and it was just all like
Yeah.
related to like how to build up your notch count and how to get laid. And then from there, you saw it start to move into this shift of like other elements of self-development, entrepreneurship, getting good in the gym, combat, like combat sports and all this other stuff. And then you started to see this shift into how it relates to fatherhood and civilization and family, and then even like religion and spirituality. And so it's been really fun to see the progress through all of it, and to see this kind of maturation of what our space is, and to see how many guys have come around to the idea that fatherhood matters, that spirituality matters, that civilization matters. And it's not just, how can I just go find some new girl to sleep with this weekend? Yeah. But I've been involved with it for a little while, and a lot of it at first, honestly, like a lot like it is for a lot of guys, was just LARPing. It was a lot of just faking it until I made it. And I started a blog called Masculine Style, that I was wanting to write how clothing was related to all this stuff within masculinity. And it wasn't until it wasn't until we had my first, so it'll be 10 years next month, that we knew we wanted my wife to be able to stay home full time.
Mhm.
And I was making $13 an hour, and I couldn't
Yeah.
find a better
Yes.
job, right? Like, just there was no
What
way.
were you doing at the time?
I worked for a credit union. I was a loan officer. Yeah.
Okay.
And I couldn't find better work. Part of it was because we were still like dealing with the last recession. Um, and part of
Yes.
it was
Spoiler alert.
exactly right. But I mean, I couldn't find anything better. And I had built up enough momentum with the blog that I was getting consistent emails. And I thought, well, maybe I can make some money off of this. And so I did these like $25 style consultations, and I
Okay.
made, I think, $400 that first month. And so it was
Was
enough that
it
we
was it
only
in
had to.
person, or did you do everything
No,
online?
it was all digital, and it was like the delivery was so bad. I mean, it was worth more than $25, but still, compared to what I'm doing now, it was obviously nothing. But I made enough that like we just had to borrow a little bit off the credit card that first month. And my wife has not had to work a single day since she's been a mom.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of like, I went from the credit union and doing the blog to then working in custom suiting while simultaneously doing the blog. And I did that for about 5 years. And then it was 5 years, just over 5 years ago, that this has now been my full-time gig. And
Okay.
this is all I do, and I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you always have like an interest in like apparel and fashion, or is that something that kind of like, there's a pivot point for you? Or has that just been kind of something you've always been interested in?
No, I think for me, I was kind of lucky to be acutely aware of not just like the deeper implications of it early on, because so when I was in junior high, I went to a private school,
Okay.
and I had to wear the gray slacks and the white button up and the rep stripe tie and the navy blazer, like the whole uniform. And I was really big into BMX and punk rock. And so I wanted like green Liberty spikes and leather battle jackets with band patches. Like, I had these two very disparate identities, and two very disparate identities that were entirely rooted in aesthetics. Like,
Mhm.
you had to look like a punk rocker, or you had to look like the private school kid. And I remember feeling this dissonance of who I thought I was and the way that I had to dress, or like the way that people would treat me when I was in one set of clothes versus when I was in another. And so I would say I've always been aware of the identity implications
Mhm.
and the social cohesion implications of clothing and appearance, and it's always just been kind of like baked in the cake for me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, kind of that like cognitive dissonance of like, I'm in these clothes or in this appearance, but it's like not who I really am. Like
Right.
you could feel that, right?
Right.
And I think so. Like point of like personal note. So I've always been into tattoos,
Hmm.
but I've been in the corporate space, right? And it's kind of like taboo, of like, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't have anything that shows. But I was finally like, just F it, man. So like, I got like the half sleeve now, and then I'm going for the full sleeve, and I
Yeah.
just after getting that, like walking out of the tattoo shop, I was like, I just feel like so much more like myself.
Yeah, you
Right.
feel like you're you. And now the person you are on the inside has found an expression externally. So there's this alignment between the inside and the outside as opposed to this dissonance between the
Yeah.
two of them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So right now, as you said, for the past 5 years, you've basically been doing like consultations. Guys can
Mhm.
hit you up and say like, "Hey, man, like I'm wearing Crocs and jean shorts. Like, help me, please."
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fun because what I do is very different. Like I'm not a stylist.
Yeah.
I have no interest in just saying, here's like the 3 shoes that are going to be on trend this summer. And so go buy them and we'll get you looking fashionable. What I do is I teach my guys to be able to think about, again, who they are on the inside. It's amazing how after a couple months of working with me, guys have a better sense of who they are than they ever had before, because we have to dig really deep into their own sense of self and how they see themselves fitting in the world and how they want to fit into the world. And only then can we actually find clothing that pulls that out of them. And so it's a much deeper and a much more self-sufficient process. My whole goal by the time I'm done is to have a client never have to hire me again, as
Yeah.
opposed to like every 6 months you gotta come back
Yeah.
and we
What should I
gotta
wear
work
this
together.
summer?
So here's
Yeah.
what's on trend. No, not at all. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's awesome, Taylor. Like I read your book, Appearance of Power. I thought it was awesome. I think I'd love to talk kind of about the different archetypes too, and
Yeah.
be a refresher for me too. Like if I remember correctly, I'm kind of like a split between like a rugged, refined
Hmm.
look, and I struggle sometimes. Like, all right, like I feel like I should be wearing like plaid shirts all the time, but like I don't know, like, is that really me? So I like, if you taking me on a client would be like tremendous help for me. But just for guys that are kind of just thinking about this for the first time, like take us through those 3 archetypes.
Yeah. So the first thing to understand is that really good style, like we've already hit on, starts on the inside and then moves its way out. And so in order to start, you have to know how you best interact with the world. And I've broken that down into 3 different archetypes. So you have rugged, refined, and rakish. And basically, the way that that shakes out is the rugged archetype is the guys who best interact and they thrive with the world through physical means. That's working with your hands, that's building things, that's being involved in some sort of physicality. Maybe that's a sport, maybe that's strength training, maybe it's something that way. But you're at your best and you feel like you're at your best when you're doing something physically. The refined guys are at their best when they're interacting within systems and social hierarchies and all of these kind of like mores and class structures and rules and all of that. And they get it. They get how this works. They understand how to navigate it, and they love playing by the rules, and they love being able to just go along and do it that way. Or like being the guy that's up on top and sets the rules and kind of
Mhm.
creates culture and all of that. And then the last one is rakish. And these are the guys who are at their best. They understand the rules as well as the refined guy does. But rather than thriving by following the rules, they thrive by breaking them or going against the grain or finding ways around them. And so the way that it works is every single one of us has elements of all 3 of those archetypes in us. You're not going to be one-dimensionally rugged, refined, or rakish, but you are going to have a pretty unique blend to it. And so you've got, your elements of all of it. And so it sounds like if you're feeling like I'm limited to, I gotta always be wearing the plaid shirts, it's because 1, you're probably leaning too heavily on the rugged, and 2, you're probably only seeing the rugged archetype in a one-dimensional way, whereas there are multiple different ways. Because again, like you take a plaid shirt and you put that on a rugged guy in feudal Japan or in ancient Norway, or you put it on a guy who's taming the Wild West 100 years ago, like the rugged archetype exists in all of those cultures,
Mhm.
but the plaid shirt doesn't exist in those cultures. And so they
Yeah.
had their own manifestations of that archetype. And so the way to help you is to start to kind of break your paradigm a little bit and say, okay, what are other ways that I can express this ruggedness that doesn't have to do with just being limited to these plaid shirts so that you can feel more congruent than you currently are?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I was asking, like, in preparation for this interview, I was kind of telling my wife, what about you, like what you do, and I was like, honestly, I had an outfit, and I was like, honestly, like, tell me what you think, right? And she's like, well, if you like it, then I like it, and I'm like, that's such a bullshit
That
answer.
doesn't help. You steered me wrong, babe. Come on.
Still get mad at me for saying that, but I feel like a lot of times, like once we get married, right? Like, let's say we're not married, like we're dating our potential spouse, we're trying to court, like I feel like we have much more emphasis on what we wear and how we present ourselves appearance wise, and then at some point in time, right, like through marriage, that kind of goes on the back burner for whatever reason. We stop courting our wife, we stop and it also goes to the gym as well, which we'll
Yeah.
talk about,
Yeah.
and like the actual like physical appearance and strength. But, so like why do you think that is of like, hey, we cared about this. Now we've like achieved this goal of marriage, and all of a sudden we're like, whatever, I'll wear sweatpants, like,
I think the root is even in the way that you asked the question,
okay.
is that marriage is something to be achieved, as
Mhm.
in, hey, I got married and
Yeah.
now I can just coast and
Relax.
exist
Yeah.
forever, right? As opposed to, it's like, oh, marriage means that like I finally got in the arena. I'm not in the stands
Yeah.
anymore. I'm
Start.
actually down
Yeah.
on the field in the arena. Now is when the real work actually starts.
Mm.
And I think that little bit of a mental paradigm, that shift is huge, because that's when you stay in better shape. That's when you stay dating your spouse. That's when you stay working on yourself and dealing with your fundamental character flaws that you've been able to hide for the last 20 years. That's when like all of your growth happens, if you see marriage as the arena as opposed
Yeah.
to as the finish line.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've taken like since reading your book and kind of watching your content, like taking a lot of stock of just what's hanging in my closet,
Mhm.
and I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, for sure. So my wardrobe is condensed quite a bit,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I guess like, so take me down the route of somebody that is having a consult with you. We kind of define like, hey, what your archetype is.
Mhm.
Like, what's the next step from that, right? Like, we need to go pick out a wardrobe, right? And like,
Yeah.
I would say there's unlimited options that you could pick from one archetype and another. So like, how are you trying to advise guys on one, like the quantity of items they should have, and two, are there any things like per the archetype that's like a staple, saying like, hey, this is a go-to, you'll be fine with this.
Yeah, good questions. So I typically don't even start shopping with my clients or having them start doing that process until we're 2 months into working together, because we have
Okay.
to do that much prep work ahead of time. Um, when it comes to kind of staples or things like that, there's probably anywhere between like 15 and 25 standard things that across archetypes, across different tribes, really anybody can wear. So you can take like a pair of dark denim, like just simple jeans. Most men can do jeans, and it doesn't matter if you're rugged, refined, or rakish, you can
Mhm.
do jeans. Plain t-shirts, a casual button up, a good pair of sneakers, like all that kind of stuff. But the guys that are coming to me, they want some measure of that, but what they want is the full expression of who they are. So even like how big your closet should be, there's not a right or a wrong answer to that. I have some
Mhm.
guys who they're super minimalist, and they're like, I have quite a few clients that are digital nomads, and they really need a closet that will fit into a backpack and it will pack up at any point in time. And I have other guys that have converted second bedrooms into closets, and they have just so much clothing. And there's not a right or a wrong. One of the ways that I help my guys look at it is energy boosts versus energy drains. Are
Yeah.
you more energized by having a small, simple, compact, versatile wardrobe, or does that feel stifling and restrictive? And you get more of an energy boost by having a lot of personal expression, a lot of variety, and a lot of variation. And again, not a right or a wrong answer. It just depends on what your own relationship with it is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love how you phrase that. Is it an energy boost or energy drain? I had a conversation with a good buddy of mine, and he kind of had that frame around totally something totally different, but
Hmm.
I've started to really use that frame around a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it was for me, it was like we just moved into a new house. It's got a little bit of a yard. It's like it would take me, I don't know, maybe like 2 hours to cut and like edge and trim and
Uh-huh.
everything. And I was like debating, like, hey, should I just hire somebody to do this? And the way I was explaining it was based off of money, right? It was like the value of my time, right? Like what
Right.
I'm doing with my time outside of this. But he kind of shifted that for me and was like, well, hey, do you enjoy doing it? Like, does it give you energy? Right.
Yeah.
I was like, actually, yeah, it kind of does. Like, I enjoy doing the yard work and like keeping it nice, and and yeah, that paradigm shift I think is
It's so
really cool
big.
about things that way. Mm.
It's so big because and I think part of that is even shifting away from, I think one of the problems, I love capitalism as an economic engine. It's the best thing there is. I hate capitalism as a cultural engine, where it's
Mm.
like, I'm not thinking, I shouldn't be thinking of the ROI of doing my yard work, or like
Yeah,
we just spent a decent amount of money to get our backyard finished because we moved into a new house 3 years ago. The backyard wasn't done, and we got it finished this last summer. And it's almost frustrating how many people are just like, so what did you do for the equity? And it's like, I don't care about the equity. I care
yeah,
about the
it's
fact
sort
that
of
my
nice yard.
kids are on the trampoline while I'm grilling on Saturday, and we now just like tripled our living space. Like that's why I finished the backyard. And so it's that energy boost of being able to be around my family. The money's irrelevant at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that structure of boost versus drains a lot more than ROI when it comes to more meaningful stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, just, kind of knowing your story too, I'd love to get into some of your extracurricular activities,
Yeah.
right? Like when we talk about energy drain and energy boost, I mean, it seems like you're taking on some pretty cool stuff, just as a hobby. I know you gotten into weightlifting here recently.
Hmm.
You were playing the cello, is that right? You were
Yeah.
learning
So I had my first recital yesterday, and whew, that was
like,
abysmal. Oh man.
throwing things at you on the stage or
Oh
what?
yeah, I know. I mean, thankfully no, but it was one of those where, you practice for months, and of course your worst run through in like 6 weeks is the one that's on stage in front of everybody. But that's both an energy boost and an energy drain in and of itself, because I was pretty dejected, but then also like, okay, I need to practice more, I need to do better, I need to step up on it. And that's one of those things where, okay, yeah. So like I've been strength training for almost 9 years now. I like to set different physical challenges. Like I've boxed, I've done half Ironman, I've done big Spartan beasts, and again, fatherhood for me is an energy boost because I want to set that example for my kids.
Yeah.
This is why I do this stuff. I felt like such a hypocrite as I was getting on my kids' cases for not doing their piano lessons or complaining about going to piano practice when they don't see me practice. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I guess that means I need to learn a lesson. I need to start learning an instrument too, because I can't expect that of my children if I'm not willing to do it myself. And so a lot of the stuff that you guys will see me do on social media is very much driven by I use the term aspirational fatherhood. I try to make being a dad, being a man, being in, your like middle age as something that my kids want to grow up to be or to be
Mhm.
with, as opposed to something that needs to be avoided and escaped for as long as possible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about the weight training stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
I saw you. You got a garage gym,
Uh-huh.
right? You got the family
So the
working out
kids
with you
can
a
come
little
out
bit
and work
as
out.
well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So how's that going? Like, when did that start? When did you said you've been weight training for about 9 years or so?
Yeah, 9 years. And it started purely aesthetically, where I bought some swim trunks and I didn't look like the guys in the photos because I'd gotten skinny fat. And it was like, ah, crap. I got to start working on this. And man, I fell in love with it. I love it. Like I lift 3 days a week. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I work with the guys over at Barbell Logic. Matt Reynolds is not only a really good friend, but he's my personal coach. And so he's helped me out through all of my other training and everything else. And I know for me, in fact, I was sick last week and I missed 2 days in the gym. And that's the first time in probably 4 years that I've missed more than one consistent day in the
Really?
gym, because it's such a staple for me. Like the headspace that I'm in, learning how to love using my body, like it's so crucial for me to be able to do that. And now I'm learning kind of the opposite, where I just started doing yoga this week because I'm trying to find balance in that. I'm really good at like the push, 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 the go,
Yeah.
go, go. I really suck at relaxing. I'm like neurotic and high stress and all of that. And so I learned over the years how much my mindset improved from physically learning how to strength train. And so now I'm experimenting with, can I learn how to relax? Can I learn how to be more calm? Can I learn how to be more willing to just let things go and not be so uptight about stuff, if I lead by teaching my body to do that through its own different type of relaxation training? And so that's where the experiment is right now. Yeah.
Okay. Are you supplementing that with the weight training, or you're not
Yeah.
backing that
Yeah.
away, right?
No,
Okay.
not backing off the weight training at all. It's supplementing. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, that'll be on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And I'm going, and I'm just so bad compared to everybody else that's in there. And it feels good to be a beginner in these different arenas. And so it's been really good. It's been a boost so far on that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to touch on a couple of things there. So first one is yeah, yoga is incredible. I don't do it like I used to do it consistently. I
Mhm.
probably do it kind of off and on now, but yeah, definitely feel a difference. One, just like in my mental headspace, and then two, just from like a flexibility standpoint, right? And be able to actually move my body a little bit is awesome. So one question with that with yoga, are you just doing kind of like the regular 1 hour yoga session? Have you done any like hot yoga or
It's
anything like
all
that?
hot. Apparently, the
It is.
studio I signed up for is all hot. So I started on
It's
hard mode,
brutal, isn't
which
it?
is really good. Yeah, but I love it because it's still I feel like because I'm so inflexible that it actually helps me get into better position. And so I'm going to make more progress there. And there's something about being in that space that makes it less distracting because you have to be so focused on how everything is or keeping the sweat out of your eyes or anything. So I like that it makes me more present than it is when I was trying to do it in the living room with like yoga with Adrian, or my wife and I were doing it or something like that. Like having to be in a very different space, it forces me to be more present. So I like that it's hot that way.
Yeah. Hot yoga is fun. It's I don't know. I the first time I did it, it was an incredible experience. But I remember looking down and there's just like a pool of
You're
sweat
just
down there. Yeah, and
swimming in it.
and I was like looking around, like, is everybody sweating as much as I am? Like, like
Just me. Just me.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, have you when I think of like people starting out yoga, have you seen that movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
No,
No,
no.
you haven't.
One of
So
those, I just missed it. Yeah.
no, there's a yoga scene in that. It's I forget the comedian's name, but he's like out in Hawaii on vacation and he like goes to this yoga class and he's just trying to like, prove himself that he can do it. And it's hilarious. The teacher is Kristen Wiig and she's like telling the whole class, like, hey, we're gonna do this, exercise, whatever. And she will like stare right at him and be like, and for beginners, like you can do this, and he's like, no, I got it.
No.
Yeah. It's just like 10 minutes of him just doing these ridiculous
Oh
poses.
man, brutal.
With like a Mai Tai in his hand. But no, like I love seeing the different things that you're doing. And like you said, does it give me, is it filling my tank or is it taking away from my tank? And I think, really what I see from a lot of guys and not just dads, but just men in particular is like they don't have that next thing, that like next challenge, that next goal. And I
Yeah.
think it does a couple things for you, right? Like it's going to constantly like keep your mind sharp. It's going to keep you focused and like you have a direction.
Mhm.
But then two, I think with new things, it's going to keep you humble as well, right? And like always learning.
And that's so crucial because how many guys do you know that are still living in their glory days, right? And they can vicariously, armchair quarterback their favorite sports or their kids' sports or something else. But then you watch them try to do something and they can't because they haven't had to humble themselves. They haven't had to be the beginner in a long time. And too many guys get too unfamiliar with how it feels to be a beginner. And I think it's one of the most important things to constantly be reminded of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. I just ran my first ever half marathon.
Oh, sick. Nice.
Dude, it
Did you
sucked
break two?
so
Did you break
bad.
2 hours?
No, so it was a half marathon, but it was a trail run too, like up
Oh,
and down.
fun. Yeah, so
So,
you're dealing with the elevation. That makes it
oh
all,
my
all the
god,
more interesting,
it
right?
was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to about, and it ended up being 14 miles, so it went a little long.
Oh, sick.
Like
Nice.
I hit 13.1, and I was like, "Why am I still running? Like,
There's the finish line.
what is happening? I'm still in the
And you're
woods."
getting passed by 70-year-old women, and you're just like, this sucks so
It
much.
was terrible. So like I was training up really good for it. Like I'm not a runner by like nature at all. Like I was in the army, we ran all the time then, but like once I got out of the army, I was like, I'm done with running.
Yeah, not
Like
touching that
I
again.
did not enjoy that. But again, like, hey, humble yourself, like be a beginner, learn something new, challenge yourself. So I got on a half marathon plan, and was doing great with it. And then we had a new baby, right? So that kind of throws a hiccup into the training plan.
Always.
So I was very ill prepared for a 14-mile trail run. Yeah, I got to about mile 12 and like the cramps started.
Yep.
And I was getting to where I would run about, I don't know, a quarter mile or so. And then just like, and like cramp in places that I've never had a cramp before.
Uh-huh. Oh, so
And,
good. It's so good for us to be in those positions, to just suck
oh
at
yeah,
something.
and you said like the grandma passing me. Absolutely. The last 2 miles, yeah, I was getting passed by everyone.
Everyone.
And it was humbling, man, because there was like 60-year-old ladies that were just like cruising along me.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, I am sucking right now.
Yep.
And
So
thankfully,
good
one
for
of the
us.
grandmas, they had a couple of little like energy chewables, like help me get over the finish line. But yeah, so I don't know if I'll do
Good
it
for you.
again,
That's awesome.
but I checked the box.
Yep. That's awesome.
So, well, what's on the challenge for you right now? I mean, you're doing yoga, you're doing some cello.
So the big one, the big physical challenge this year is so I'm running the St. George Marathon October 1st, I believe. And the challenge is it's a full marathon, and I want to be able to wake up that morning and deadlift 405
All right.
and then go do the marathon in sub 4 hours. So it's my 405 by 4 challenge. And
Okay,
so
I love it.
We're
Yeah.
gonna see how that one goes. Because
I love it.
I've really fallen in love with the whole concept of hybrid athletes.
Yeah.
Guys
Yeah.
like Fergus Crawley or Hunter McIntyre or Nick Bear.
Mhm.
A lot of these guys that are not just one dimensionally, it's all endurance training or it's all strength training, but they like do like Fergus Crawley. Like you watch YouTube videos of him squatting 500 and then running a sub 5 minute mile the same day, or he did an 1,100 pound powerlifting total and then did a sub 11 hour Ironman in the same day. Like the level of performance these guys are at is so inspiring, and it's so fun to see the multidimensionality that I'm finding more and more ways that I can start to push myself like
Yeah,
that.
no, I agree with that totally. That's the reason I signed up for the half marathon, right? Was like,
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, I could power clean a lot or whatever, but like, I probably couldn't run 2 miles and
right. So let's fix that
15
one because
minutes.
that one
Yeah, so
matters
all right,
too.
let's try it out.
Awesome.
But yeah, I totally love that, man. So like with your weight training program, like how involved are you getting your kids? Like I see you, having pictures on Instagram with your kids coming out, and like, are they at a point now where they're going to actually start lifting some weights and you're
Not
like
yet.
form? No.
Not yet. The whole focus right now is to make it, and some days it's really hard because it's early in the morning and I want to just be able to lift, or I've got buddies that come over and I'm neck deep in conversations with them. And sometimes it's hard and distracting that my kids come out and they want to hang out and monopolize the
Yeah.
conversation and all of that. But really, the whole focus on it right now is that, and I'm really grateful. My parents were both, they were both avid runners.
Okay.
And the one thing that was hard about it was that I would I would see them leave or I would see them come back, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't
you would like
see
run with
you
them.
wouldn't see
Yeah.
no, I couldn't, like my parents were marathoners and all that. I'm not doing that at 8 years old. And so I would only see the tail end of it, but you don't see like the full process of it. And so the focus right now is to just give them as much exposure to it
Mhm.
as we can. And now my two oldest, my 9-year-old or yeah, my 9-year-old and my 8-year-old, like we need to start doing sprints because they're slower than all the other kids on their soccer team, but there's
Yeah.
incentive there because they're recognizing that they're slower than all the other kids on their team. And so what we try to do, and we do this with school, we homeschool, is we try to provide environments in which they can kind of naturally start to develop a desire to be better, and then we
Mhm.
lean into that with them as opposed to forcing betterment on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's tell me about homeschooling. Well, like my wife and I have thought about it, and thankfully we're in a great school system right
Mhm.
now that we love, but have always considered it. How challenging has it been?
It's not very hard.
No,
That's the thing that's so crazy is my wife will do maybe an hour on some days if the kids are having a harder time, 2 hours of real like concentrated effort, but it's not an all day 8 day thing. And we started off trying to replicate what you did in public school or private school,
yeah,
like that curriculum. And we found that there needs to be some of that, but really, I mean, your kids are naturally curious. The desire to learn is already in there. And so it's more about cultivating their ability to lean into that
yeah,
than it is we're going to shove all this information into your head that you don't want. And so
yeah,
a lot of our homeschool is them being curious about, like, I remember there was one month a couple years back where we just watched every YouTube video we could about volcanoes because that's what they were curious about.
yeah, yeah,
Or like they come up with little games related to what time it is and how it can be derivatives of different, like, if it's 404, 4 plus 0 equals 4. And so they're coming, like, they just make it fun. And schooling is now something, or I should say, learning is something that's omnipresent in our family, even though schooling only happens
mhm,
for a couple hours a day, a few days a week. And we even
yeah,
treat it as like, I don't work on Fridays, and in the winter we go up skiing, and that's school on Fridays because the physical matters just as much. Their sports are part of their curriculum. Their music is part of their curriculum. It's We just try to create an environment of learning and growing, and then let them do it.
yeah. And I love what you said too about like letting them lean in like naturally, right? Like I feel like that's like two things about public school. Like one, I feel like it's so much wasted time, right?
So much wasted time.
And you can
It's
condense that.
babysitting.
Yeah, like you said, you can condense down the actual, like, focused work to, like,
Mhm.
1 or 2 hours a day and,
Yep.
like, accomplish a lot.
Yep.
And then 2, the ability for them to lean into, like, where they naturally want to, right? Like,
Yeah.
with public school, it's like, "Hey, we'll do this for a little bit. Alright, cool. Now we're going to the next thing. Now we're going to the next thing." But with yeah, like, with homeschool, I would imagine you'd be able to recognize that interest and say, like, "Alright, well, let's take a little bit of time to explore that," you know?
One, is that not how your life is as an adult?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we originally started because of concerns about what was morally being taught at
Yep.
school. But then very quickly it turned into the whole structure of school, of having to be on the clock, and you go from this regimented thing to this regimented thing. Like, I don't model that. That's not what my work looks like. That's not what our life looks like in any way. And so why would we send them down that path when that path is over as soon as they're no longer in school? Why would we not instead look at, okay, how do we help them cultivate some entrepreneurialism? How do we help them be self-directed in their learning or in their growth or in their other things this way? Because that's what it's like as an adult. So why would we not start them off that path, on that path
Yeah.
sooner? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's something my wife and I are definitely gonna explore. I think, we'll
Highly
see what
encourage it.
yeah, we'll see what the future brings. And then, do you guys do any type of like cohort stuff with homeschooling?
No, no, and we don't have any real opposition to it. We have just found my wife is very guarded of her time. The idea of having to be beholden to, on Wednesdays we have to be at this place this time because
Yeah.
the homeschool co-op, she doesn't want to have to do it. She likes being able to be in control of her schedule. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, we live in a neighborhood where we're surrounded by young families and
That
young
was gonna be my
kids.
next question is like, how
Yeah.
are you having the interaction
Oh,
and
no, the socialization is so
yeah.
easy because, I mean, on a given day, there will either be no children in my home or there will be 18 children in my home. And it just depends on whose turn it is, and we're very active in our church. And so there's a lot of exposure to kids that way. Our kids play sports. And so there's a lot of exposure to still having to learn how to navigate hierarchies and team dynamics, and this kid's better at me than this. And that's why they treat me differently. Like, there's still all of that. My kids are plenty socialized. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's been one of our hesitations, too. But I think same thing. We live in a neighborhood with a bazillion kids,
Hmm.
so I think we could definitely get that socialization. So I want to touch on too, Tanner. Is you said, hey, I'm very active in my community, active in the church, and
Hmm.
just from looking at your social presence, you've got a pretty good tribe built, right? Like
Yeah.
you've got men around you that have the same mindset. They're going to push you, to achieve more and be a better dad, be a better father, husband, provider. For some guys that could be a challenge, right? Like they feel like, hey, I'm lonely, I'm on an island, nobody's going through this experience that I am. So how would you advise guys to build that network and build that tribe? And is it one, just trying to link into something, or is it two, should I be the leader and start building that myself?
Yeah, good questions. I think the first thing, and this is something that I've struggled with and have to fairly consistently remind myself, because I have quite a few different groups. Like, I've got all my other entrepreneurial friends that I get to interact with on the internet. I've got one group of friends that come over in the neighborhood and they lift. I've got another group of guys that I get together with every other Wednesday and we do stuff. Like, I've got all these different networks of men, a fatherhood group that I run. And there's still plenty of times that I feel lonely because I'm the guy who's pushing for this, or the guys don't
Mm.
quite align with me here. And so I think, unless you're involved in something, and maybe even then this isn't true, I wouldn't know, I've never experienced it, but unless you're involved in something like in the military or as a firefighter or something where you're so like homogenous and so aligned in a goal, you're probably going to deal with some level of loneliness, even if you've got really good networks of guys that are built in. And so don't try to see it as a way to completely alleviate it, just to minimize it, because I certainly don't deal with loneliness the same way that a lot of other guys do, not by a
Mhm.
long shot. And I've got a lot of great friendships. The other thing that I would say is, be prepared to vet and lose a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Like, I've got, this group of guys that we get together. We went out last night. Um, there were five of us. There's normally six of us. We've been trying to do this consistently. I started doing this with these guys 9 years ago, and we're at six, and we've probably had somewhere between 30 and 40 that have like come and gone from the group. Or same thing with my guys that are in the neighborhood that will come over and lift. I've got three guys that come consistently, and I've probably got another 10 guys that have like faded in and faded out. And so there has to be the willingness to put yourself out there and invite guys and start things and try things, and also expect that you're going to lose the majority. And that's part of the process, to be able to find the few core guys that are going to be consistent. You're really going to develop those
Mhm.
relationships with. So it's, in a lot of ways, it's like dating, where you just got to get in so many reps to find the men that are worth investing more into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, great take there. So I want to transition a little bit, Tanner. Talk about you as a father. and a family leader. So you said you got 4 girls and 1 son, right?
Hmm.
Okay. I've got 2 girls. Just recently had a son. And one of the things that I'm struggling with a little bit, and not really because he's 2 months old, right? Like you can't really teach him too much when he's two,
Yeah.
but it's like, hey, like, am I going to parent differently, right? Like with my son, with my daughter, and like, what does that look like? So someone that has 4 daughters and then a son. So like, what does your parenting style look like in differences with boys and girls?
So we parent differently, not only just between him and the girls, but also for them as individuals,
Mhm.
because motives are different, incentives are different, desires are different. It's all different. And I think one of the big problems that a lot of us experienced coming from a systematic structure like the 20th century is that it was that the individual needed to cater to the system. And so you had to fit the corporation, or you had to fit the school system, or you had to fit the family system. And then you, as the individual, were subservient to that. And like we talked about at the beginning, the family is the fundamental role, and to a large extent as individuals you do need to sacrifice for the greater good of the family, but that doesn't mean you entirely give up your identity or entirely give up your sense
Mhm.
of self. It should be give and take in both ways. And so we definitely do it differently. We also very early on help them recognize the differences between being boys and girls and lean into and embrace those things. It's something to be celebrated, it's something to
Mhm.
be acknowledged, it's something that they treat differently about each other. And yeah, I mean, I definitely have different expectations of my son than I do of my daughters. It's a challenge with him in a lot of ways because, in some ways, my son is the most tender out of all of my children,
Mhm.
which is fascinating. And I never want him to feel bad about that because it's a strength, and I certainly don't want to squash that. And so, teaching him how to develop courage and tenacity and grit while not smothering that
Yeah.
tenderness is a really good challenge. And it's really the best thing about parenting, and I'm sure you already know this, is that it just shines a mirror on your own weaknesses and all the ways that you're still messed up, that you've like figured these like janky workarounds and you have to actually address it and fix yourself so that your kids are better off. And it's such a blessing to just have that forced into your view all the time. And so I'm grateful that all my kids are their own individuals, but they're all reflections of me in certain ways. They're all reflections of my wife in certain ways, and that we have to approach each child differently because of those variable circumstances.
Yeah, I love that. I love that kind of parenting individually, right? Like regardless
Mhm.
of sex and gender, like yeah, that's going to be a little bit different, but you know even past that, right? Is they're all going to have their own individual identities and kind of the way that they act, and so you're going to parent a little bit different with each of them. Yeah, I know my 2 girls are like nothing alike, and if I try to parent the same way, it would not go well,
Good
right?
luck, right? Yeah,
So
yeah.
I do want to touch on too, though, is with a son, right? This is going to be new to me.
Hmm.
Um, is kind of the concept of like rites of passage, right?
Yeah,
And I saw one of your stories a while back ago about your son. I'm not sure if it was a birthday or
yeah.
um,
Right around his 8th birthday. This was
okay,
just back in March. Yeah,
okay, yeah, you kind of put him through the ringer a little bit, didn't you?
yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
was
So
great.
tell me about that and like why did you do that? Like tell me about it and kind of yeah, what was some of the things behind wanting to do that?
So rites of passage are obviously a pretty universal thing, and I think that we are hugely missing out as a culture in that we don't experience those, we don't participate in those anymore. And I've tried to do as much homework on this as I can. I really appreciate guys like Ryan Mickler, who runs Order of
Mhm.
Man. He's a really good friend, and first kind of he walked me through what he did with his sons as they went through. And you learn that there are these kind of like there's the big rite of passage when now you're a man and we're going to
Yep.
treat you like a man, but there's these kind of preliminary ones that almost help set them up and get them ready for it. And 8 is one of those ages. From our faith, that's the age of accountability, when you know the difference between right and wrong. But in a lot of cultures, 8 is when you're no longer like a little child, but you're kind of in this next
Mhm.
realm. And so we had set up something where, okay, so we have a family motto. It's Guzzies do hard things, good things, kind things, and fun things. And this is something we're constantly trying to reinforce in ourselves and in our kids. And I knew that I wanted to do something around this that would help reinforce those different values. The weekend that my son was born, I remember taking some time and let my wife be alone in the hospital, and I went and I bought a pocket knife, and
Yep.
that the plan was to give it to him when he turned 8. And I wanted to. It was one that I used for years, and I've given him a couple opportunities to like practice with it. He knew he was going to get it, and it was this. It's like, dude, we're going to go through this rite of passage, and now you're going to be able to carry your knife with you all the time because it's going to be your knife, and it's not that you're going to have to ask dad to borrow it or anything. So there was this kind of like reward at the end. And so we ended up doing a few different things. The first thing that we did was a burpee challenge.
Okay.
And we did 5 sets of 20 burpees, and they were different. Like he had a dartboard that he could throw throwing knives at. And as he popped the balloons, it would say what the different variations on it were. Because part of it was that it needed to be fun. He's 8, you know? And so it was things like, for these 20, you have to have your mouth taped shut. Or for these 20, you have to like jump up and you know, like knees into your hands, like you have to do the higher jump. And so we did those. We live right next to a big lake. And so we went down and did a cold plunge. And this was probably one of my favorite parts of the whole thing, is that the challenge was to do it for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And when we were about 80 seconds in, I said, let's do 2 minutes. And my son normally doesn't do very well with things being sprung on him. He's very good if he has enough time to be able to like,
prepare.
He's one of the most courageous people I know if he has the time to talk himself into something, but he doesn't always do great when he has something sprung on him. But he's like, okay, let's do it. And so we did 2 minutes instead of 90 seconds in the cold water. And then the third one, he has this bearded dragon that he got for Christmas a couple years ago. And my son, like most 8-year-old kids, really only likes certain foods. And he's kind of a diva when it comes to cooking all the wonderful stuff that my wife cooks. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, and this surprisingly happens a lot in different rites of passage in different cultures, is he needed to eat something gross. And so we had to eat a live cricket, the ones that he feeds his bearded dragon.
So did you eat it with him?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this is what was fun. And so I invited like both of his grandpas, all of his uncles, his friends' dads, men from my different group that like he sees as men. Like I invited all these men out here to do this. And we had a turnout of about 20 guys, and there were 6 of us that participated with him, and the other ones were at least there to cheer him on. So it was this big kind of like communal thing. And it was really fun that you had all these men that were doing this with him. They're in the lake with him. They're eating the crickets with him. Like we're going through all of these hardships with him, but he's still the center of attention, and it was still his rite of passage. And it was really powerful. It was really cool to see him not only go through it, but really like excel through all of it. And then to see how it's changed his willingness to engage in hard things, or to like he didn't just go through a door into the same room. Like he went through a door and he's now in a different phase of life. And so it's been really cool to see that happen for him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine the effect that has on him, just like, positively, like, just the acceptance that he sees, from you that he looks up to, the acceptance from the other guys that are in your cohort, and just kind of almost like a proving ground for him, right? Like I'm worthy to, to be a man now, and to get this pocket knife. And
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it makes me think of and I know you mentioned a lot, and you probably know it a lot better than I do, but Jack Donovan's book, The Way of Men.
Yeah.
Kind of talks about some of those things, and kind of the gang mentality that like, hey, we're always trying to prove ourselves.
Yep.
And so it kind of brings it back full circle to that. And then also kind of brings it full circle back to the appearance as well, right? If hey, we're trying to, not only express ourselves, but also like fit into society in a certain way. We want
exactly.
To.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's awesome. I was, have you guys done anything similar to your daughters?
No.
For any type of passage or anything? No.
Nope. We haven't done anything for them. I don't think that there's any. I don't know. I'm sure that my wife will end up doing certain things as they hit puberty and they go through that. I know one of the things that my wife really looks forward to. She's delivered all of our kids naturally and unmedicated, and the last 2 have been home births. And my wife,
a champion,
right? She is, but she's become a big advocate for that, for the sacrifice, the deepness of the bond that comes through going through that pain, the spiritual aspect of it and everything. And so I know one of the things that she's really looking forward to is studying to become a midwife, and then being able to be there through that whole process with our daughters and with our daughter-in-law as they go through that. And so I think that will very much be a similar kind of like welcome into a whole different world, and very much a rite of passage for them to be part of that the way that my wife has done it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Well, where can folks find you at? Like, I'll link to, your Instagram account, but, and then you got the book, which is fantastic. Would definitely recommend it. The Appearance of Power. So I'll link to that as well. But is there any way folks can reach out to you?
Yeah. Yeah. So the best way to interact with me is on social media. I'm most active on Instagram and on Twitter. My DMs are open in both of those, and it's at Tanner Guzy. And what you guys will find is it's very similar to what this conversation has been. It's maybe 10-20% of my content is style related, but the rest of it is all masculinity or fatherhood or culture or faith or all these other things that infinitely matter more. And tying all this in together. So come interact with me on there. Shoot me DMs. If you're interested in coaching, shoot me a DM, and then we can schedule a time that we can talk and do all that. If you want to learn more just about what my approach is, you can go to masculine-style.com and see more about what it looks like from there.
Awesome, Tanner. Well, I've got one last question for you. I've started to ask it of everybody. I didn't prep you for it, so we'll get the natural response here. Most guys, can bear children, right? They can have offspring. They can become quote unquote a father, right?
Yeah.
But that's very different than being a dad. So what would you say is the definition of being a dad?
So a dad, it's such a, okay, let me see if I can articulate this, because one of the things that I talk about a lot is like a man is somebody who has both the drive and the power, but also the goodness to do it in a good way, that he shapes the world in his image. And again, he does it not only just for his own benefit at the expense of everybody else, but he does it for everybody else. But I don't think that a dad is a man who shapes his children into his own image. Oh, this is interesting. I'm getting emotional thinking about this. It's a man who takes all the good in his image, that is who he is, and helps inject that into his children so that they can be the best version of what their own image is. So it's not that I'm living vicariously through my kids and that they're going to complete me, but it's that I have to make myself the best that I can so that I can give them as much as I can so that they can become the best versions of themselves.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I'll stick with that. I feel like I articulated that the way I
I love
want.
that.
Yeah.
It makes me think of it makes me think of that sculpture that's got it's got the dad, and it's kind of holding hands with his son or daughter, and it's like a puzzle, right? And
Yes.
like puzzle pieces coming out of the dad, right?
Yeah.
And going to make the kid whole. Not that like our pieces make them whole, but to your point, we're taking like the best things from us, instilling them into our kids so they can go be better than us, right?
Yeah.
Be the best version of themselves. So I love that answer.
Awesome.
So, well, Tanner, awesome, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
Guys,
dude.
I'll link to everything in the description. Reach out to Tanner first, any type of stuff on style and apparel, and definitely don't reach out to me. I'm still working on that. So, but Tanner, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, dude. Glad we got to hang out, dude.
Awesome.